I'm Rod Sowden, Managing Director of Aspire Europe, and I'd just like to give you a quick overview of management of portfolios. What's my interest in this particular topic? Well, apart from being the lead author of MSP, which is the model that sits around it or below it, I also wrote the P3M3 model, which assesses portfolio capability in organisations. So I'd like to bring a different view of portfolio management with the experiences that we've got over and above strictly what MOP is going to tell you. And during the course that you're going to do, I will be sharing those ideas in introductory videos. So there are three main components of MOP. There are the principles, which are the things that every portfolio should be doing. There's the definition cycle, which is when you pull the portfolio together, and then there's the delivery cycle, when you actually go into delivery. So let's very quickly cover the principles. So the idea of principles is that they are empowering, so that the people who are running portfolios can refer to them and say, this is good practice, we should all be doing this. All right? They're self-validating, so they've been proven, and they've been particularly proven when we've done P3M3 assessments, and also they're universal, so they apply to every portfolio everywhere in the world, whether it's a sub-portfolio or a departmental portfolio or a corporate portfolio. It applies to all of them. All right, so let's quickly think about what those principles are. So the first one is Energized Culture. So in any organisation that wants to deliver a transformation portfolio or just maintain a portfolio, there needs to be energy and there needs to be commitment. An organisation that's pottering along, surviving, profit levels, performance levels, whatever you judge yourself on, each year and is happy where it is, won't have the energy to deliver the improvements that are needed. So therefore it has to find that energy, and that energy can come from the outside world or it can come from internally. Chief exec changes, that kind of stuff. Then we need senior management commitment. Senior managers are quite often threatened by portfolio management, right? Because it starts to see the whole of the organisation and breaks down the fiefdoms that exist. So we need to have senior management support. And it's quite often when these principles think, what happens if we didn't have it? What happens if we didn't have energy? It doesn't change. What happens if we don't get senior management support? We get lots of politics. All right. So the next one is governance alignment. So unlike a project or program that can actually set itself up to exist a little bit in isolation, a portfolio can't. It has to interface with all the functions around the organisation. We're looking at property, ICT, manufacturing, whatever your organisation does. The governance model of portfolios needs to sit with the organisation. So it needs to be embedded. So we need to have HR and finance and all those groups need to come in together, else it won't work. So we need to have that governance alignment, particularly around decision making. Then we've got strategic alignment. So most organisations have a business plan of some sort. If we think about it, portfolio management is about delivering the business plan. It's looking 1, 2, 3, 5 years away and say, how do we get the capability to do it? What's the organisation going to look like after all this? So that's why it's inherently linked to the strategy planning, and hence the word alignment. And then finally, we've got this thing called a portfolio office. Now, interestingly, we've done some reviews and consultancy work where we're trying to actually sort out a portfolio office, or a PMO, as you probably call them. And on a couple of occasions, we had to point out, actually, you've got a PMO, but you haven't got a portfolio. So it's trying to be all things to all people without a real sense of purpose, which is delivering the business plan. So the portfolio office is, you need to have one. I mean, you need to think about the structures, whether it's hub and spoke, whatever it happens to be. So we must have a portfolio office. So those five things are there. Energized culture, if you haven't got one, nothing's going to happen. Senior management commitment, if they're not, you're going to have politics and make no progress. Governance alignment, you'll get confused decision making. Strategic alignment, people will ask, why is there a portfolio anyway? And without a portfolio office, you don't have the drive and the resources to make stuff happen. So that's very quickly, that's what we're talking about, the principles. Okay, so let's just think about the two life cycles: portfolio definition and portfolio delivery. Now, if you're familiar with MSP, they're actually not a million miles apart. Portfolio definition is about identifying what's going on or what needs to be done, and then defining is about designing how it will happen. So those two stages are quite similar to MSP. And portfolio delivery is amazingly similar to managing the tranches because you're managing a wave of change. Yeah. And below that, actually, when you look at the roles, we've got a portfolio manager who's building the capability, benefits managers checking that we get the benefits. Not a million miles from the MSP program manager BCM model. So there are definite similarities in this. It's scaled up and possibly delivering at a different pace. Okay, so that's the two cycles that we see. And then what are the practices that go on? Well, in definition, we've got just 5 words, and I think you'll find all the way through NOP it's very abstract. So you need to think a lot about what is it you're going to do with your organisation. So the first thing we need to do is understand what's going on, and quite frankly that answers the question, what the hell's going on around here, right? So actually, what are the projects going on, what's each of the big divisions doing, what changes are going on, and then once you've got all that information, you can categorize it. Yeah, right. So we've got short tactical, we've got benefits, justified change, we've got savings, we've got legislative changes going on, categorizing. And when we do that, that will give us the ability to what MOP is calling prioritize. That's where we start to go, well, these are the must-dos in the short term, these are the could-dos, and these are the should-dos, and most importantly, for those that you're familiar with the Moscow acronym, the won't-dos. It's a big decision thing in portfolio management is stopping things, but you cannot do all things. The organisation has only a certain amount of oxygen to cope with the amount of change that's going on. Then once we've actually worked out what the priorities are, we need to think about the word balance, right? And in MOP, that's about balancing the rate of change with the ability of the business to cope with the change. Right? Well, there's a never-ending idea of changes that could go on, but can the business cope? All right. So balancing is about when can we cope with the change? What are the other things that have to happen? Because all this is about keeping the business optimal. And some of the early ideas about portfolio management came out in the mid noughties and early noughties. It's because some organisations got so overdosed on programs and projects they didn't do what they were there for. And there was a famous quote about the Home Office at that time, where an incoming minister described it as not fit for purpose. And that's what we don't want. We don't want your organisation to become unfit for purpose and start overdosing on change and losing control. All right, and then ultimately we can put the plan together, the headlines that are going to see us through for the next 5 years or 3 years, and we give you a lot more detail in the first year, more abstract as you move away. Okay, so that's the portfolio definition. We need to understand what's going on, categorise it, prioritise it, balance, which means what can we cope with, have we got the resources, money being an important one, to deliver all these, and then we have a plan. And the second phase is portfolio delivery. Now it's important to remember that an organisation doesn't start from the beginning and go to the end, because you're probably delivering a wave of change at the moment, and so the definition bit needs to go on concurrently. So even though the diagram shows them as you do one, then you do the other, and then you come back and do it again. If you actually have a look at your strategic planning processes in your organisation, you should probably do that. We're delivering the 3-year plan while the strategy people are looking at the next 3 years. So a lot of this stuff is actually happening. And a bit like with MSP, really, it's quite often adopting rather than implementing. So you suck all these elements in and bring some order to it. Okay, so what are we talking about when we think about portfolio management? Well, if you look at the 7 areas there, they're very similar. Well, they're not very similar. They are exactly the same areas that we had in P3M3. All right, so basically what those mean, we've got one called management control, which is basically all those initiatives that are running at the moment. How do we know they're hitting their time, cost, quality, and delivering the outcomes? So management control is about making sure that the things that are running are actually working. And then we've got one called governance, organizational governance. That one's more about, are we running the right things? So so it's a cyclical thing. We're aiming to get over there, but actually have we got the right projects running, the right programs? Are they delivering the right things? Have they got the right scope? So whereas management control is doing things right, organizational governance is about doing the right things. So you might need to inject new initiatives in, and of course you might need to stop the ones that you've got to create some oxygen for the organisation's delivery to happen. Then the other areas we look at is benefits. Yes, we have a benefits management manager in the structure, because really benefits is asking the question, is it still worth doing? Are we going to get the dividend? Are we going to get what we were promised? Is it still worth it? Or are other things now starting to undermine it? Or even better, other things happening that help us exploit it? Next thing is finance. Yeah, obviously you need money to run this portfolio, and we need to run it well. So this will be the links into your corporate finance people or your directorate finance, wherever your portfolio is sitting. Risk is really about what the hell could go wrong now, yeah, because there's things go wrong all the time, isn't it? So are any of those things creating more dangers for your portfolio that you need to take tactical actions to avoid? Changes at the top tier of the organization, changes in your supply chain, increased demand in the supply chain can affect your ability to manipulate the market, for example. Yeah, so things like that going on. And of course, stakeholders. Portfolio, massively complex stakeholders, and they're all at the top of the organisation. So what's your plan for dealing with those guys? Who are the advocates, who are the adversaries, and who are the ambivalents, and making sure that the adversaries you're working hard to keep on board. Don't ignore the advocates, you need to keep them on your side, and the ambivalents, can we make them more less adversarial and get them to believe? So your standard stakeholder stuff going on in there. And then finally, we've got resource management, because nearly all the maturity assessments that we do they haven't got enough resource management, and it's always one of the weaker areas. And the immature ones don't even think about it, and they start thinking, oh yeah, we'll find the bodies somewhere. Well, they don't. So as you get up the maturity ladder, the ones that the best ones that we've seen, the level 4s, they've got their resource management nailed on for 3 years. They know when people are being released from certain things, they're going to retrain and re-educate them, put them into new things. And so resource management, and it's not just your own people, you've got the supply chain. If you're in Network Rail or Highways or these big organisations that are buying things through the public sector, have those consultancies got the capacity, as the construction companies got the capacity to deal with all the stuff that you want to buy off them? Yeah, and these things can take a long time. Yeah. All right, so that's that. So one thing that's happened really since NOP came out is structures of portfolios, and best practice that we see now is those organisations that see all the little portfolios. Well, not little really, are they? ICT and property and all those. You have an overarching portfolio, and then you subset into what we call sub portfolios, which wasn't really an NOP at the time, but is there now. Anyway, a quick run through. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you enjoy the course, and I'll catch up with you at the start of each session with a bit more of a more detailed view of this stuff.